You walk into a supermarket at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the shelves look exactly the way they always do. Fully stocked, perfectly arranged, every avocado in its place. But there's a number most shoppers never hear. In the United States alone, roughly 80 million pounds of food is wasted every single day, not in restaurants, not in homes, in supermarkets, before it ever reaches your cart. So where does it all go? The answer isn't what you'd expect. It's not simple. It's not clean. And it involves an entire invisible system most people never think about. A system with its own trucks, its own warehouses, its own politics, and its own uncomfortable secrets. It starts long before the food hits the shelf. Every major supermarket chain operates on something called a shrink budget. That's the industry term for the amount of product a store expects to lose before it's ever sold. Spoilage, breakage, theft, expiration, shrink. At a mid-sized grocery store, that number can reach $700,000 to $1 million per year, built right into the store's financial projections. The waste isn't accidental, it's planned. Here's how the countdown works. A delivery of romaine lettuce arrives on a Thursday. It gets a sell-by date. That date is conservative, set by the supplier to account for variation in transport and storage temperatures. The actual lettuce might be perfectly fine for another 3 or 4 days after that date. But the moment the label reads, yesterday, it gets pulled. Not because it's bad, because the liability is too high, so it enters the back room. And this is where the system splits. About 30% of that pulled food, according to the USDA Economic Research Service, gets donated. Major chains like Kroger, Walmart, and Whole Foods all run formal food donation programs, often partnered with national networks like Feeding America, which coordinates over 200 food banks across the country. The food gets logged, sorted, and picked up by refrigerated vans. Bread, canned goods, produce. That's a day past its sell-by, but still perfectly edible. This part of the system works, mostly, but it handles a fraction of the total waste. The rest, the majority, goes somewhere else entirely. Some of it goes to anaerobic digesters. These are large industrial tanks, often located near farms or municipal waste facilities where organic material is broken down by bacteria in the absence of oxygen. The result is two things: biogas, which can be captured and used as energy, and digestate, a nutrient-rich slurry that goes back onto farmland as fertilizer. Companies like Waste Management and Clean Earth Capital operate digester facilities specifically for food waste from retail chains. Whole Foods, Stop and Shop, and several regional chains have contracts with digesters. The food you didn't buy gets turned into electricity that might power the store you're shopping in next week. But that's the optimistic version. Because a significant portion of supermarket food waste, especially in smaller towns, older store locations, and regions without digester infrastructure, still ends up in landfill. And when food decomposes in a landfill, it doesn't decompose cleanly. It decomposes anaerobically, the same process as a digester, but without the collection system. The methane just releases into the atmosphere. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that food waste in landfills is one of the single largest sources of methane emissions in the country. The salad you didn't want creates a gas that's 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide over a 20-year window, and there's another layer most people don't know about. Some supermarket waste doesn't get thrown away at all. It gets sold. There's an entire secondary market for food that's close to or past its sell-by date. Companies called salvage grocers or discount food distributors buy this product in bulk at pennies on the dollar. Grocery Outlet, Big Lots, and hundreds of independent scratch and dent stores carry food that was pulled from major chains. A box of cereal with a dent, a can of soup whose label is torn, a case of yogurt that expires in 2 days. It all gets resold at 30 to 70% below retail. Entire businesses, some with multiple locations, exist entirely within the gap between a sell-by date and a trash can. And then there's the produce that never makes it to the shelf at all. This is called upstream waste. Before your supermarket receives a shipment of strawberries, a sorting process has already happened at the farm and at the distribution center. Strawberries that are too small, too oddly shaped, or not the right shade of red are rejected. Not because they taste different, because they don't photograph well. Because the consumer research says shoppers are more likely to pick up the perfect-looking strawberry. The NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, estimates that 20% of all produce grown in the United States never even leaves the farm, rejected before it. Enters the retail supply chain at all. You've never seen those strawberries. You never will. Some farms compost their rejected produce on site, turning it back into soil amendment. Some run it through animal feed operations, a long-standing practice where rejected produce gets processed into feed for pigs, chickens, or cattle. The USDA's hierarchy for food recovery puts animal feed as the third highest priority, above composting and landfill. But the logistics are complicated. Not every farm is near an animal operation. Not every rejected batch is consistent enough for feed standards. A lot of it simply sits in a field and rots. Now zoom out to the scale of all of this, and the number becomes almost impossible to hold in your mind. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations estimates that 1/3 of all food produced globally for human consumption is lost or wasted every year. That's approximately 1.3 billion tons. The resources that went into producing that food, the water, the fertilizer, the land, the fuel for every truck and tractor, are also wasted. The water embedded in food that's thrown away is estimated at 45 trillion gallons per year. That's more water than the entire Mississippi River carries in 3 months, and yet the shelves look full when you walk in at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. That's intentional. The abundance you see is part of the product, the visual message of a perfectly stocked shelf. Not a single gap, not a single wilted leaf, is engineered. Retail research consistently shows that consumers buy more when shelves appear full. A 2019 study from the Journal of Retailing found that shelf fullness directly correlates with purchase volume, independent of the actual products available. Stores overstock deliberately because the appearance of abundance drives sales, and the cost of that overstock, the waste, is already priced into the shrink budget. The waste is the strategy. There are cities and countries starting to push back. France passed a landmark law in 2016 making it illegal for supermarkets over a certain size to throw away edible food. Stores must donate it or face fines. South Korea introduced a pay-as-you-throw system for food waste, charging households and businesses by weight for waste disposal, which dramatically reduced the amount of food entering the waste stream. In the United States, the EPA and USDA set a target in 2015 to cut food waste in half by 2030. As of the most recent tracking data, progress has been slow. The systems are changing, but they're changing slowly. Back in the store, it's now 9 p.m. An employee walks the produce aisle with a cart. Anything that won't survive until morning gets pulled. Bagged lettuce, packaged strawberries, sliced fruit. Some of it will make it to a donation pickup in the morning. Some will go into a composter in the back. Some will end up in a dumpster behind the building. And the shelves will be restocked before you arrive tomorrow morning, perfectly full, like nothing happened. You walk into a supermarket and the shelves look exactly the way they always do. Fully stocked, perfectly arranged, every avocado in its place. Now you know what it took to make them look that way.